Lisa had been dreaming about this moment for 3 years. She stood at her kitchen window, watching her kids splash around in their brand new pool, and felt like pinching herself to make sure it was real. The morning sun sparkled off the water, and she could hear her twin daughters giggling as they tried to do handstands underwater. "Mom, watch this," 10-year-old Katie called out, preparing for what looked like her 15th cannonball of the day. Her sister Amy was floating on her back, staring up at the clouds, completely peaceful. Their little brother Jake, who just turned 8 last month, was practicing his doggy paddle near the shallow end where his dad Tom was sitting with his feet in the water. The pool had taken forever to install. First there were permit delays. Then the excavation crew hit a water pipe. After that it rained for 2 weeks straight, turning their backyard into a mud pit. Lisa had started to wonder if they'd ever actually get to use the thing. But here they were on this perfect Saturday morning in July, and it was everything she'd hoped for. Tom looked over at her through the sliding glass door and gave her a thumbs up. He was grinning like a kid himself. They'd been saving up for this pool for years, putting away every extra dollar they could find. Lisa had taken on extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. Tom had started doing weekend handyman jobs on top of his regular construction work. The kids had even contributed their birthday money and allowance savings. Living in Meadowbrook Estates wasn't cheap, but they'd fallen in love with the community the moment they saw it. The houses were beautiful, the lake view was incredible, and the neighborhood felt safe and friendly. Most of their neighbors were families with kids around the same age. Katie and Amy had made friends with the Johnson twins from 2 houses down, and Jake was buddies with little Peter from across the street. The homeowners association kept everything looking nice, though Lisa had to admit some of the rules seemed a bit much, like how you couldn't have more than 3 garden gnomes in your front yard, or how your garbage cans had to be a specific shade of brown. But overall it was worth it to live somewhere so well-maintained and peaceful. Lisa poured herself another cup of coffee and stepped onto the back patio. The pool looked even better from out here. They'd positioned it perfectly to catch the morning sun, while still having some shade from the big oak tree in the afternoon. The lake stretched out beyond their fence, creating this amazing view that made the whole backyard feel like a resort. "Hey, Mom, can we have a pool party next weekend?" Amy asked, floating over to the edge. "We'll see, sweetie. Let's enjoy it ourselves for a while first." But Lisa was already mentally planning it. Tom's brother and his family could come over. Maybe some of the neighbors and their kids. She'd make her famous potato salad and Tom could grill burgers. It would be perfect. That's when she noticed the woman standing at the edge of their property. Linda Patterson lived 3 houses down, in the big colonial with the perfectly manicured lawn that looked like something out of a magazine. Lisa had met her a few times at neighborhood gatherings, and Linda always seemed a bit intense. She was the type of person who remembered everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing her opinions about how things should be done. Right now, Linda was standing at the property line between their yards, arms crossed, staring directly at the pool area. She had her phone out and appeared to be taking pictures. Lisa felt a little flutter of unease in her stomach. What could Linda possibly need pictures of? "Tom," Lisa called softly, not wanting to alarm the kids. "Come here for a second." Tom got up, water dripping from his feet, and walked over to where Lisa was standing. He followed her gaze and spotted Linda immediately. "What's she doing?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "I have no idea, but she's been standing there for about 10 minutes just watching and taking pictures." They both knew Linda had some strong opinions about neighborhood standards. Last Christmas, she'd actually sent them a typed letter complaining about their holiday lights display. According to Linda, having inflatable decorations was lowering the tone of the neighborhood. Lisa had been so shocked by the letter that she'd shown it to Tom, and they'd both laughed about it. Who sends formal complaint letters about Christmas decorations? But this felt different, more serious. "Should I go talk to her?" Tom asked. "Let's just ignore her for now. Maybe she'll go away," but Linda didn't go away. If anything, she seemed to be getting more agitated. She was pacing back and forth along the fence line now, stopping every few steps to take more pictures. At one point, she pulled out what looked like a measuring tape. "What's that lady doing, Mom?" Jake asked, swimming over to the side of the pool closest to where Linda was standing. "Just mind your own business, honey. Keep playing." Lisa tried to focus on her kids having fun, but Linda's presence was making her nervous. The woman was clearly upset about something, and Lisa had a sinking feeling it had to do with their pool. But what could possibly be wrong? They'd gotten all the proper permits. The county inspector had signed off on everything. The pool company had assured them they were following all local regulations. After another 15 minutes of Linda's surveillance, Lisa decided she'd had enough. She was about to walk over and ask Linda what the problem was when the woman suddenly turned and marched back toward her own house. But something about the determined way she was walking made Lisa think this wasn't over. "That was weird," Tom said, settling back down at the pool's edge. "Yeah, really weird." Lisa tried to shake off the bad feeling, but it lingered. She'd worked hard to build good relationships with their neighbors. Most of them were lovely people who'd welcomed the family warmly when they moved in 2 years ago. Mrs. Chen next door always brought over extra vegetables from her garden. The Johnsons let them borrow tools whenever they needed them. Even Mr. Garcia, who was pretty quiet, always waved and asked how the kids were doing. But Linda was different. Lisa got the impression that Linda saw herself as some kind of neighborhood watchdog, making sure everyone followed the rules and maintained proper standards. The problem was Linda's idea of proper standards seemed to be pretty extreme. The kids played for another hour before finally getting tired and hungry. Lisa made them sandwiches while they dried off, and Tom started putting away the pool toys. It had been such a perfect morning. Exactly what they'd dreamed of when they'd first talked about getting a pool. But Lisa couldn't shake the image of Linda standing at their fence, taking pictures, and looking angry. Whatever was bothering their neighbor, Lisa had a feeling they'd be hearing about it soon. And judging by Linda's past behavior, it probably wouldn't be a friendly conversation. Still, as Lisa watched her kids happily munching their sandwiches and planning their next swim, she decided not to worry about it too much. They'd done everything by the book. Their pool was legal, safe, and properly installed. Whatever Linda's problem was, surely it couldn't be that serious. She had no idea how wrong she was. Lisa was just finishing up the lunch dishes when she heard the doorbell ring. Through the front window, she could see Linda Patterson standing on their porch, holding a thick folder and looking like she meant business. Lisa's stomach dropped. She'd been hoping that whatever had bothered Linda that morning would just blow over. "Tom," she called to her husband, who was in the living room with the kids. "Linda's here." Tom looked up from the cartoon he'd been half-watching with Jake. "Want me to get it?" "No, I'll handle it. Just keep an eye on the kids." Lisa took a deep breath and opened the front door. Linda was wearing a crisp white blouse and dark pants, like she was dressed for a business meeting instead of a casual Saturday afternoon visit. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she had the kind of expression that Lisa had seen on the faces of difficult patients at the hospital, the ones who were convinced that everyone else was doing everything wrong. "Hello? Linda, what can I do for you?" "We need to talk," Linda said without any of the usual pleasantries. "About your pool situation." Lisa kept her voice calm and friendly even though she was already annoyed. "Sure, what about it?" Linda opened her folder and pulled out a highlighted copy of what looked like an official document. "I've been reviewing the Homeowners Association bylaws, and I'm afraid your pool installation violates several important regulations." "I'm sorry, what?" Lisa felt genuinely confused. "We got all the proper permits and approvals. Everything was inspected and approved." "County permits are one thing," Linda said, her tone suggesting that county permits were basically worthless. "But Homeowners Association rules are completely separate. And according to Section 12 of our community guidelines, any recreational water feature must be positioned at least 15 feet from the property line." Linda thrust a measuring tape toward Lisa. "I measured this morning, and your pool is only 12.5 feet from the boundary. That's a clear violation." Lisa stared at the measuring tape like it might bite her. "Linda, I really don't think that's right. Our pool company specifically checked all the setback requirements before they started digging. Pool companies make mistakes all the time," Linda said dismissively. "They're focused on making money, not following community standards. I've seen it happen before." The kids' voices carried from the backyard, where they'd gone back outside to play on the swing set. Lisa could hear Katie trying to teach Jake how to pump his legs to swing higher. It was such a normal, happy sound. And here she was dealing with this bizarre situation. "Look, Linda, even if there is some kind of measurement issue, surely we can work something out. Maybe I could plant some shrubs along the fence line or something." "It's not just about the setback," Linda continued, flipping to another highlighted page. There's also the noise ordinance. Section 8 clearly states that excessive noise is prohibited during quiet hours, which extend until 10 a.m. on weekends. Lisa felt her patience starting to slip. My kids were just playing normally. They weren't being excessive about anything. Splashing and shouting can be very disruptive to neighbors who are trying to enjoy peaceful weekend mornings, Linda said. Some of us value tranquility. It was almost 11 o'clock when you came over to take pictures, Lisa pointed out. And my kids were just having fun like normal kids do. But Linda wasn't done. She pulled out another sheet of paper, this one covered in her own handwriting. There's also the issue of fairness to the broader community. Fairness? My son Bradley is on the regional swim team. He practices 6 days a week and has real athletic potential. Meanwhile, he has to train at the overcrowded community center pool, while other families get private swimming facilities right in their backyard. Lisa blinked. She was starting to understand where this was really going. Linda, are you saying my kids shouldn't use their own pool because your son is a swimmer? I'm saying that community resources should be allocated more thoughtfully. Bradley needs proper training facilities. He has goals, ambitions. He's working toward something important. And my kids aren't important? Linda's expression hardened. Your children are just playing around. Bradley is a serious athlete. The community should support families who are contributing something meaningful. Lisa felt heat rising in her cheeks. The absolute nerve of this woman was incredible. Linda, this is our property. We saved for years to buy this house and install this pool. My kids have every right to enjoy it. Do they, though? Linda shot back. When there are other children in the neighborhood who could benefit more from access to proper swimming facilities? Are you actually suggesting that I should let your son use our pool instead of my own children? I'm suggesting that responsible neighbors think about the greater good of the community instead of just their own selfish interests. That was it. Lisa's nurse training had taught her to stay calm under pressure, but this was pushing every button she had. Linda, I need you to leave now. I'm not finished, Linda said, pulling out yet another document. I've already prepared formal complaints to file with the Homeowners Association Board. The setback violation, the noise disturbances, and the general disregard for community harmony. Community harmony? Lisa's voice was getting louder despite her efforts to stay controlled. You're the one disrupting the harmony by harassing us about our legally installed pool. Tom appeared at Lisa's shoulder. He'd obviously heard their voices rising and come to back her up. Is there a problem here? Linda looked Tom up and down like she was sizing up an opponent. Your wife seems to think that having money gives your family special privileges in this neighborhood. Special privileges? Tom's voice was dangerously quiet. Like using our own pool in our own backyard? Like ignoring community standards and flaunting your wealth while other families struggle to provide opportunities for their children? Lisa could see a muscle in Tom's jaw twitching. He worked construction and wasn't used to people talking to him like this. Lady, I don't know what your problem is, but we didn't do anything wrong. We followed all the rules, got all the permits, and paid for everything ourselves. The rules you followed were insufficient, Linda said primly. I'll be filing complaints with the Homeowners Association first thing Monday morning. And if they don't take appropriate action, I'll be exploring other options. What other options? Lisa asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. There are county health departments, building inspectors, noise ordinance enforcement. Plenty of ways to address situations where neighbors aren't being cooperative. Tom stepped forward slightly. Are you threatening us? I'm informing you of the consequences of not addressing legitimate community concerns, Linda replied. Some of us take our neighborhood responsibilities seriously. Lisa put a hand on Tom's arm before he could say something they'd all regret. Linda, I think you need to leave now. If you want to file complaints, that's your right. But this conversation is over. Linda snapped her folder shut with a satisfied expression. You'll be hearing from the Homeowners Association Board. And I strongly suggest you start thinking about how to make this situation right for the whole community. Not just your own family. She turned and walked away with the same determined stride she'd had that morning. Lisa and Tom stood on their porch watching her go. What just happened? Tom asked. I think we just got threatened by the neighborhood crazy person, Lisa said, though her hands were shaking slightly. From the backyard, they could hear the kids still playing, completely unaware that their perfect pool day had just turned into something much more complicated. Lisa looked at Tom, and she could see her own worry reflected in his eyes. What do we do now? I guess we wait and see what she actually does, Lisa said. But Tom, we didn't do anything wrong. We followed every rule, got every permit. I know, but something tells me this isn't over. As they went back inside, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that Linda Patterson was just getting started, and whatever came next was probably going to be even worse than what they'd just experienced. The next few days passed quietly, and Lisa started to hope that maybe Linda had gotten whatever was bothering her out of her system. The kids went back to their normal routine of swimming in the morning and playing in the yard in the afternoons. Tom returned to work on Monday, and Lisa picked up her regular shifts at the hospital. But on Wednesday evening, something happened that made Lisa realize this situation was far from over. The family was enjoying a peaceful swim after dinner. The summer heat had been brutal all day, and the cool water felt amazing. Lisa was floating on a pool noodle, watching Tom help Jake practice his freestyle stroke. The twins were playing some elaborate game that involved diving for pool toys and seemed to have rules that changed every few minutes. That's when Lisa noticed the boy. He was standing at the fence that separated their yard from Linda's, gripping the chain link with both hands and staring at the pool with the most longing expression Lisa had ever seen. She recognized him immediately, Bradley Patterson, Linda's son. He looked to be about 12 or 13, tall and lean with the kind of build you'd expect from a serious swimmer. Lisa felt a pang of sympathy. The kid clearly loved swimming, and here he was watching other children enjoy something he probably dreamed about having. She was actually considering swimming over to say hello and maybe invite him to join them when Linda appeared. Bradley Patterson, you get away from that fence right now. Linda's voice cut through the peaceful evening air like a knife. The boy jumped back like he'd been caught doing something illegal. Mom, I was just looking. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Those people think they're better than everyone else, Linda said, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. They don't care about families like ours who actually work hard and deserve nice things. Lisa felt her face burning with embarrassment and anger. How dare Linda talk about them like that, especially in front of her own son? And what did she mean about working hard? Lisa and Tom both worked incredibly hard for everything they had. But Mom, maybe they'd let me swim sometime if I asked nicely, Bradley said hopefully. For training, you know? Coach says I need more pool time if I want to make the regional team. You will not beg those people for anything, Linda snapped. We have our dignity, Bradley. We don't ask for charity from neighbors who flaunt their wealth while others struggle. Bradley looked crushed. He glanced back at the pool one more time before Linda grabbed his arm and marched him toward their house. Lisa felt terrible for the kid. None of this was his fault, and he was the one suffering because his mother had some kind of weird grudge against their family. That was harsh, Tom said quietly, swimming over to Lisa. The kid didn't do anything wrong. I know. I was thinking about inviting him over before Linda showed up. Maybe we still could. Talk to Linda when she's calmed down a bit. Lisa wasn't sure Linda was capable of calming down, but she nodded anyway. She hated seeing any kid disappointed, especially when it was over something so silly. The rest of the week stayed quiet, and by Saturday morning, Lisa was feeling optimistic again. Maybe Linda had made her point and would leave them alone now. Maybe they could even work something out about Bradley using the pool sometimes for training. She was making pancakes for the kids when she heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Multiple car doors. Lisa looked out the front window and felt her blood turn to ice. 2 police cars were parked in their driveway. Tom, she called, her voice higher than she intended. Tom, get out here now. Tom came running from the bathroom, still in his pajama pants. What's wrong? Police in our driveway, right now. They both rushed to the front door. Through the window, they could see 2 officers walking up their front steps. Lisa's mind was racing. What could the police possibly want with them? They were law-abiding people. They paid their taxes, followed traffic laws, had never even gotten a noise complaint before. The doorbell rang, and Lisa opened it with shaking hands. Good morning, folks. I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Johnson. We received a call about a possible safety violation involving children and a swimming pool. Lisa's mouth went dry. A safety violation? Yes, ma'am. The caller reported unsupervised minors in a backyard pool and expressed concerns about whether the pool met current safety codes. Lisa looked over the officer's shoulder toward the backyard, where she could clearly see Tom sitting at the pool's edge with his feet in the water while the kids played. Officer, my husband is right there supervising, and I was watching from the kitchen. The children are never unsupervised. Officer Johnson looked toward the pool area and seemed confused. We can see that, ma'am. The caller made it sound like children were swimming alone without any adult present. That's absolutely not true, Tom said, joining Lisa at the door. I've been out there the whole time, and my wife has been going back and forth between the kitchen and the patio. Do you mind if we take a look at the pool area? Officer Martinez asked. Just to confirm everything is safe and up to code? Of course, Lisa said, though her heart was pounding. Would you like to see our permits and inspection records too? That would be helpful. Lisa led the officers through the house to the backyard while Tom went to get their file folder of pool documents. The kids had stopped playing and were watching with wide, worried eyes. It's okay, guys, Lisa told them. The officers just need to check on something. Officer Johnson walked around the pool area, examining the safety features and equipment. Officer Martinez reviewed their permits and inspection certificates. Everything looks perfect here, Officer Martinez said after a few minutes. Pool is properly fenced, safety equipment is in place, chemicals are stored correctly. All your paperwork is in order too. Ma'am, do you have any idea who might have called this in? Officer Johnson asked. Lisa hesitated. She had a pretty good idea, but she didn't want to make accusations without proof. The caller also mentioned something about homeowners association violations and said the family was showing off their wealth inappropriately. Officer Martinez added, That's not really a police matter, but the caller seemed to think it was connected to the safety concerns. Lisa and Tom exchanged glances. That definitely sounded like Linda. Look, we don't usually get calls like this unless there's some kind of neighbor dispute going on, Officer Johnson said kindly. Is there anyone in the neighborhood who might have an issue with your family? Before Lisa could answer, they all heard the sound of a garden hose turning on next door. Linda Patterson had appeared in her backyard and was making a big show of watering her flowers while obviously straining. To hear their conversation, the officers noticed immediately. The caller also mentioned that the pool was installed without proper community approval and that the family was being inconsiderate to neighbors who can't afford such luxuries, Officer Martinez said, lowering his voice. It was becoming pretty obvious who had made the call. Officers, we followed every rule and regulation, Tom said. We got county permits, HOA approval, professional installation, and passed all inspections. I can show you everything. We believe you, sir. This seems like a case of someone using emergency services to try to resolve a personal dispute. That's not what we're here for. Officer Johnson looked toward Linda's yard where she was still pretending to water plants while clearly listening. We might need to have a conversation with your neighbor about appropriate use of emergency services. We just want to live peacefully, Lisa said. Our kids love swimming and we thought we'd followed all the rules to make that possible. You have followed the rules, Officer Martinez assured her. Your pool is perfectly legal and safe. Whoever called this in was either seriously misinformed or deliberately wasting county resources. After the officers left, Lisa and Tom sat on their patio, feeling shaken. The kids had gone back to swimming, but the joyful atmosphere from earlier was gone. I can't believe she called the police on us, Lisa said. Over a pool. Our own pool in our own yard. What's next? Tom asked. Fire department? Building inspectors? How far is she willing to take this? Lisa looked over at Linda's yard where the woman was still making a show of doing yard work while keeping an eye on their property. I don't know, she said, but I have a feeling we're about to find out. The perfect summer morning they'd started with felt like a memory from weeks ago instead of just a few hours. Lisa realized that Linda Patterson wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was someone willing to involve police and emergency services in her personal vendetta, and that made her much more dangerous than Lisa had originally thought. News about the police incident spread through Meadowbrook Estates faster than Lisa could have imagined. By Monday afternoon, she was getting text messages from neighbors she barely knew, all wanting to know what had happened and offering their support, but not everyone was on their side. Lisa first realized how divided the neighborhood had become when she ran into Mrs. Wilson at the grocery store. Mrs. Wilson lived 2 streets over and had always seemed like a nice enough person. But when she spotted Lisa in the produce section, her expression was distinctly cool. I heard about your situation with Linda, Mrs. Wilson said, not bothering with any friendly small talk. Oh yes, it's been pretty stressful, Lisa replied, hoping for some sympathy. Well, I have to say I can understand Linda's frustration. Some of us have been in this neighborhood for 20 years and can't afford to put in swimming pools. It does seem a bit much. Lisa stared at her, hardly believing what she was hearing. Mrs. Wilson, we saved for years to afford our house and the pool. We didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying you did anything illegal, Mrs. Wilson said, picking through the apples with more attention than they really needed. But maybe you could have been more considerate about how it might make other families feel. Lisa left the store feeling stunned. Was she actually being criticized for improving her own property with money she and Tom had earned themselves? But thankfully, not everyone felt that way. When she got home, there was a casserole dish on her front porch with a note from Janet Chen, their next-door neighbor. Lisa heard about what happened. This is ridiculous. You followed all the rules and deserve to enjoy your beautiful pool. Don't let one bitter person ruin your summer. Janet. That evening, Tom came home with similar stories from work. Some of his co-workers thought Linda was completely out of line, while others seemed to think Lisa and Tom were showing off and should have expected some backlash. It's like people think we're bad neighbors for having nice things, Tom said, frustrated. When did that become a crime? The situation got more complicated when Lisa learned that Linda had been busy filing official complaints. On Tuesday, Lisa received a certified letter from the Homeowners Association requesting her presence at an emergency board meeting to address multiple violations and community concerns. Lisa called the HOA president, Carol Stevens, to find out what was going on. Lisa, I'm so sorry about this, Carol said, sounding genuinely apologetic. Linda has filed 7 different complaints about your pool in the past week. We have to investigate any formal complaint, even if it seems frivolous. 7 complaints? About what? Let's see. Setback violations, noise ordinances, light pollution, failure to get proper community approval, disruption of neighborhood harmony, inappropriate display of wealth, and something about exclusive use of recreational facilities. Lisa felt dizzy. Carol, we got approval for everything. We have all the documentation. I know, honey. I was on the board when we approved your pool plans last year. But Linda is claiming there were oversights and demanding a full review. She's also threatening to bring in outside inspectors if we don't take action. What kind of action? She wants us to order you to either move the pool or share access with other community families. Specifically, she wants guaranteed pool time for her son Bradley. Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. She wants us to share our private pool? I know it sounds crazy, but we have to let her present her case at the meeting. It's in our bylaws. Lisa spent the rest of the week preparing for the HOA meeting. She gathered all their permits, inspection records, and approval documents. Tom took photos showing the exact measurements from their pool to the property line, proving they were well within the setback requirements. But as the meeting day approached, Lisa realized the neighborhood was becoming genuinely divided over the issue. At the community mailboxes, she overheard heated conversations between neighbors. I think Linda has a point about community fairness, she heard Mr. Rodriguez saying to another neighbor. Why should one family have a private pool when other kids have to use the crowded community center? But Mrs. Patterson from down the street disagreed. That's ridiculous, George. They paid for their house, they saved their money, and they followed all the rules. Would you want strangers using your backyard? The night before the meeting, Lisa was surprised by a knock at her door. She opened it to find Bradley Patterson standing on her porch looking nervous and embarrassed. Hi, Mrs. He started, then stopped. I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. It's Lisa Thompson. You're Bradley, right? Yes, ma'am. I wanted to apologize for my mom. I know she's been causing problems for your family. Lisa's heart went out to the kid. He looked mortified. Bradley, none of this is your fault. It kind of is, though. She's doing all this because she thinks I deserve to use your pool more than your kids do. But that's not true. It's your pool and your kids should get to use it. You're a sweet kid, Bradley. Your mom loves you and wants good things for you. She's just going about it the wrong way. I told her I didn't want her to cause trouble, but she says I'm too young to understand about standing up for what's fair. Bradley kicked at the ground with his sneaker. The thing is, I don't think any of this is fair. Not to you, not to your kids, well, I appreciate you saying that, Mrs. Thompson. If this all gets worked out somehow, and if your family ever wanted to let me swim sometimes for training, I promise I'd be really respectful and grateful. But I don't think you should have to. It's your pool. After Bradley left, Lisa felt even more determined to stand her ground at the HOA meeting. This wasn't really about pool access or community fairness. It was about Linda Patterson trying to use her son's swimming talent to justify her own entitlement and jealousy. The HOA meeting was held in the community center, and Lisa was shocked by how many people showed up. Usually these meetings had maybe 10 attendees. Tonight there were at least 40 neighbors packed into the room. Carol Stevens called the meeting to order and explained the situation. Then Linda stood up to present her case. "I'm here tonight because our community is supposed to be about shared values and mutual support," Linda began. "But some families seem to think that having money gives them the right to ignore the needs of their neighbors." Lisa felt her cheeks burning, but she stayed quiet and let Linda continue. "My son Bradley is a dedicated athlete who needs proper training facilities. Meanwhile, children who just splash around for fun have exclusive access to a private pool, while serious swimmers are forced to use overcrowded public facilities. That's not how private property works," someone called out from the back of the room. "Let her finish," Carol said. Linda went on to claim that the pool was too close to the property line, that the noise was disruptive, and that the lights created light pollution that affected her family's enjoyment of their own yard. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, she stood up with her folder of documents. "My family followed every rule and regulation," she said simply. "We got proper permits, professional installation, and passed all inspections. Here's the documentation." She handed copies to the board members. "We're not trying to show off or make anyone feel bad. We saved for years to afford this pool, and we just want our children to enjoy it safely in our own backyard." Board member Mike Peterson reviewed the documents. "These all look to be in perfect order. The setback measurements show the pool is actually 17 feet from the property line, not 12. And all the safety and lighting features meet county standards. What about the issue of community fairness?" Linda pressed. That's when Janet Chen stood up. "Linda, that's not how homeownership works. Are you going to demand access to everyone's nice things? Should we all share our cars and kitchens too?" Several people laughed and Linda's face flushed red. "This is different," Linda insisted. "Recreation facilities should benefit the whole community." "Then use the community pool like everyone else," called out Tom's friend Dave from across the room. The meeting went on for another hour, with neighbors arguing back and forth about property rights, community standards, and fairness. In the end, the board voted unanimously to dismiss all of Linda's complaints and issued a formal statement that the Thompson family had violated no rules or regulations. But as people filed out of the meeting, Lisa could see that some hard feelings had been created. The neighborhood felt different now, more tense and divided. Linda approached her as they were leaving. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "There are other ways to address unfair situations." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. If Linda was willing to call the police and file false complaints with the HOA, what would she try next? Linda's threat at the HOA meeting turned out to be more than just angry words. 2 weeks later, Lisa answered her door to find a county health inspector standing on her porch with an official clipboard and a very serious expression. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Inspector Richards from the County Health Department. We received a complaint about a potential public health hazard regarding your swimming pool facility." Lisa's heart sank. A health hazard? The complaint alleges improper chemical storage, inadequate filtration systems, and possible contamination risks to the local water supply. "I need to conduct a full inspection." Lisa led the inspector to the backyard where Tom was cleaning the pool skimmer. The inspector spent the next 30 minutes examining every aspect of their pool setup: the chemical storage shed, the filtration system, the water quality, even the surrounding landscaping. "Mrs. Thompson," Inspector Richards said finally, "I have to tell you, this is one of the cleanest, best maintained residential pools I've inspected this year. Your chemical levels are perfect. Your equipment is top-notch and everything is stored safely and properly." "So, there's no health hazard?" "None whatsoever. Whoever filed this complaint was either seriously misinformed or deliberately wasting county resources. We take false reports very seriously." After the inspector left, Lisa sat on her patio feeling exhausted. How far was Linda willing to take this? What would she try next? The fire department? Building inspectors? At this rate, Lisa was going to have every county official in her backyard. That afternoon, Carol Stevens from the HOA called with news that made Lisa feel a bit better. "Lisa, I wanted to let you know that the board met in emergency session today. We've issued a formal cease and desist order to Linda Patterson regarding any further harassment of your family. Really? We've also voted to pursue legal action if she continues to file false complaints or misuse official channels. This has gone way beyond acceptable neighbor behavior. I appreciate that. Carol, I really do. We're also going to send a letter to the whole community clarifying that private property rights are not subject to community approval beyond existing regulations. Some people seem confused about that. Lisa felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Finally, someone in authority was taking their side and putting a stop to Linda's harassment. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. On Saturday morning, Lisa was weeding her front garden when she noticed Bradley Patterson sitting on the sidewalk near their driveway. He was just sitting there staring at the ground, looking absolutely miserable. Lisa watched him for a few minutes, debating whether to approach. Finally, her maternal instincts won out. "Hey, Bradley," she called softly. "You okay?" The boy looked up with tears in his eyes. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry for bothering you." "You're not bothering me." "What's wrong?" Bradley glanced toward his house, then back at Lisa. "My mom says I can't even look toward your pool anymore. She says your family is trying to make us look poor, and that I'm not allowed to talk to any of you." Lisa felt her heart break for this kid. "Bradley, come sit on my porch for a minute." He hesitated, then walked over and sat on her front steps. "Can I tell you something?" Lisa said, sitting down beside him. "None of this fighting is about you or swimming or pools. It's about adults not handling their feelings very well. But my mom says you have things we can't afford and that it's not fair." Lisa chose her words carefully. Sometimes when people feel left out or worried about money, they get angry at the wrong people. Your mom loves you and wants good things for you, but she's going about it in a way that's hurting everyone, including you. Bradley wiped his nose with his sleeve. "I just want to swim and get better at it. I don't care about the other stuff. What if I talked to your mom about letting you use our pool sometimes for training, with proper supervision and maybe a schedule that works for everyone?" Bradley's face lit up, then fell again. She'd never agree to that. She says we don't take charity from neighbors. What if it wasn't charity? What if it was just neighbors helping each other out? That evening, Lisa did something that took all her courage. She walked to Linda's house and knocked on the door. Linda answered, looking suspicious and defensive. "What do you want?" "I want to talk to you, mother to mother. I have nothing to say to you. Please, Linda, 5 minutes. For Bradley's sake." Something in Lisa's tone must have gotten through, because Linda stepped onto her porch and closed the door behind her. "Linda, I know you think Tom and I are trying to show off or make you feel bad, but that's not true. We worked really hard to afford our house and pool, just like you work hard for your family." "You have no idea what it's like," Linda said, but her voice was less hostile than before. "Actually, I do. Tom and I both grew up without much money. We know what it feels like to want things you can't afford. But taking it out on neighbors isn't the answer." Linda was quiet for a moment. "It's just, Bradley is so talented, and he needs more pool time if he's going to reach his potential. But the community center is always crowded, and private lessons are so expensive. What if Bradley could use our pool sometimes for training? We could work out a schedule that gives him dedicated practice time." Linda looked shocked. "You'd do that? After everything I've put your family through?" "I'd do it for Bradley. He's a good kid who got caught in the middle of adult drama he didn't create." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I've been awful to you. I was just so frustrated and jealous, and I took it out on your family instead of dealing with my own feelings. We all make mistakes. Linda, what matters is what we do next." It took several more conversations, but eventually they worked out an arrangement. Bradley would come over 3 mornings a week to practice in their pool. In exchange, Linda agreed to stop all complaints and harassment, and to issue a public apology to the neighborhood for the disruption she'd caused. The first morning Bradley showed up for practice. He was nervous and polite, thanking Lisa about 50 times before he even got in the water. But once he started swimming, Lisa could see immediately that the kid was genuinely talented. His stroke was smooth and powerful, and he moved through the water like he belonged there. "He's really good," Tom observed, watching Bradley practice his turns. "Yeah, he is, and look how happy he is." Over the following weeks, something wonderful happened. Bradley became a regular fixture in their backyard, but not just for swimming. He started staying after practice to play with Jake and help him improve his own swimming skills. The twins enjoyed having an older kid around who treated them like swimming teammates instead of little kids. Linda slowly began to change too. She stopped by one afternoon to bring Lisa some homemade cookies as a thank you. "I owe you a huge apology," Linda said, sitting at Lisa's kitchen table. "I let my own insecurities turn me into someone I didn't recognize. Someone mean and bitter." "What changed?" Lisa asked, watching Bradley these past few weeks. "He's happier than I've seen him in months, and it's not just because of the pool time. It's because he's part of something positive instead of being dragged into adult conflicts. He's a great kid, Linda. You should be proud." "I am, but I'm also ashamed of how I behaved. I was so focused on what we didn't have that I forgot to be grateful for what we do have." Linda paused, then continued. "The truth is, I've been struggling since my divorce. Money's been tight, and I felt like everyone in the neighborhood was moving forward while we were falling behind. Instead of dealing with those feelings, I decided to blame you for having what I wanted." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed Linda's hand. "We've all been there. What matters is that you recognized it and decided to change." As summer turned to fall, the neighborhood slowly healed from the division that Linda's complaints had created. Bradley continued to use the pool for training, and his times improved dramatically. He even made the regional swim team, which was his biggest goal. The community learned something important too. At the next HOA meeting, Carol Stevens addressed the whole neighborhood about the situation. "Sometimes we forget that a strong community isn't about everyone having the exact same things," she said. "It's about supporting each other's successes and helping each other through challenges. Private property rights exist for good reasons, but so does neighborly kindness." Lisa never became close friends with Linda, but they developed a respectful relationship based on mutual understanding. Linda learned to manage her feelings of inadequacy without taking them out on others, and Lisa learned that sometimes the most difficult people are just scared and struggling beneath their harsh exterior. The pool that had caused so much controversy became a symbol of something positive. Proof that conflicts could be resolved when people chose understanding over anger and community over division. One evening in late summer, Lisa was floating in the pool watching Bradley teach Jake a proper flip turn while the twins practiced diving. Tom was grilling burgers, and even Linda had stopped by to watch Bradley's practice session. "You know what?" Tom said, flipping a burger. "This turned out better than I ever imagined." Lisa smiled, watching their backyard full of kids and neighbors enjoying the peaceful evening. "Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places," Bradley called out from the pool. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for giving me a chance to train here, and for helping my mom and me work things out. Thank you for reminding us what community really means. Bradley." As the sun set over the lake, Lisa realized that their perfect pool had given them something even more valuable than a place to swim. It had taught them all that building a real community meant looking beyond your own needs to see how you could help others reach their dreams too, and that was worth far more than any pool could ever be. Maya stared out the small airplane window as the plane climbed higher into the clouds. She'd finally stopped crying, but her eyes still felt puffy and sore. The businessman next to her kept bumping her arm with his elbow every time he typed on his laptop. The woman on her other side was reading a romance novel and occasionally sighing dramatically. She pulled out her phone and looked at the text message she'd sent to her grandmother 20 minutes ago. "Hi, Grandma. Something weird happened with my boarding pass. The flight attendant said there was a mistake and moved me to a different seat. Not sure what happened, but I'm on the plane now." Her grandmother had replied immediately. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I have the confirmation right here. You should be in seat 3A in first class. Did you show them your ID?" Maya typed back, "Yes, I showed them everything. They said the computer system was down and that first class was for paying customers. I'm in the middle of row 23 now." 3 dots appeared, showing her grandmother was typing. "Then that doesn't sound right at all. I'm going to call the airline." "Are you okay, honey?" "I'm fine," Maya lied. "Just embarrassed. Everyone was staring at me." Meanwhile, up in the first-class cabin, Rebecca was having the time of her life. She moved between the spacious seats, offering passengers warm towels and expensive snacks. Every few minutes, she'd tell someone about how she'd caught a teenager trying to sneak into first class with a fake ticket. "You really have to watch out for these things," she whispered to a well-dressed couple in the front row. "Kids these days think they can just walk into first class like they own the place." I've been doing this job long enough to spot trouble right away. The man nodded approvingly. Good for you. We pay a lot of money for these seats. The last thing we want is to deal with people who don't belong here. Rebecca smiled proudly. Exactly. I take my job very seriously. First class is a privilege, not a right. A few rows back, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen had watched the whole boarding incident with growing concern. She'd flown enough to know that what happened to Maya wasn't normal. Flight attendants didn't usually examine boarding passes that closely, unless there was a real problem. And the way Rebecca had talked to the girl seemed unnecessarily harsh. Mrs. Chen had been flying for 40 years, ever since her husband started his import business. She'd seen discrimination before, and something about this situation felt very familiar and very wrong. During the beverage service, Mrs. Chen made her way back to the main cabin. She spotted Maya immediately. The teenager was still looking upset, staring out the window while everyone around her watched movies or slept. Excuse me. Dear? Mrs. Chen said softly, stopping next to Maya's row. Are you okay? I saw what happened during boarding. Maya looked up, surprised that someone was talking to her. Oh, yes, ma'am. I'm fine. You don't look fine, Mrs. Chen said kindly. Would you mind if I sat with you for a few minutes? There's an empty seat right behind you. Maya glanced around nervously. Is that allowed? Of course it is. We're all just passengers here. Mrs. Chen settled into the empty aisle seat behind Maya and leaned forward slightly. I'm Mrs. Chen, by the way. I'm Maya, nice to meet you. Maya, I've been flying for a very long time, and I've never seen a flight attendant examine a boarding pass the way that woman examined yours. That's not normal procedure. Maya turned around in her seat. Really? I thought maybe I did something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Tell me, was your ticket legitimate? Did someone really buy it for you? My grandmother bought it as a surprise. She showed me the confirmation email and everything. She saved up for months to give me this trip. Maya's voice got quiet. She's going to be so upset when she finds out what happened. Mrs. Chen felt her anger growing. That ticket was real, wasn't it? Yes, ma'am. I have the confirmation number and everything on my phone. Then what happened to you was completely unacceptable. Mrs. Chen reached into her purse and pulled out her own phone. Maya, would it be okay if I took a photo of you? And maybe you could show me your boarding pass confirmation? Maya hesitated. Why? Because I think more people should know about this. What that flight attendant did wasn't just wrong, it might have been illegal. While Mrs. Chen was talking to Maya, Rebecca continued her rounds in first class, still bragging about her good work. She approached a middle-aged businessman who was working on his laptop. Everything comfortable up here, sir? She asked with her brightest smile. Perfect, thank you, he replied without looking up. We had a little excitement during boarding, Rebecca said, clearly wanting to share her story. A teenager tried to use a first-class ticket that obviously wasn't hers. Some people will try anything these days. The man looked up from his computer. What do you mean obviously wasn't hers? Well, you could just tell by looking at her, Rebecca said confidently. Wrong clothes, wrong attitude, wrong everything. First-class passengers have a certain quality about them, you know? The businessman frowned. What exactly are you saying? Rebecca realized she might have said too much. Oh, nothing specific. Just that experience teaches you to recognize when something doesn't fit. But the man wasn't satisfied with that answer. Did you actually verify whether the ticket was legitimate or not? Well, our computer system was having issues, but it was pretty obvious. So you moved a passenger without actually checking if her ticket was valid. His voice was getting colder. Rebecca started to feel uncomfortable. Sir, I've been doing this job for 8 years. I know how to spot. How to spot what exactly? The man closed his laptop and looked directly at Rebecca. What specifically made this passenger's ticket obviously not hers? Rebecca realized she was digging herself into a hole. I just meant that she seemed very young and first-class tickets are expensive. So you discriminated against a passenger based on her age and appearance, without actually verifying her ticket? The man's voice was getting louder, and other first-class passengers were starting to listen. No, sir, that's not. I was just being careful. Being careful would have meant checking your computer system or calling someone who could verify the ticket. What you did sounds like profiling. Rebecca's face was turning red. Sir, I really don't think you understand the situation. I understand perfectly. The man pulled out his phone. And I think your supervisor should understand it too. Back in the main cabin, Mrs. Chen had convinced Maya to let her take a few photos and write down the details of what happened. She also took a picture of Rebecca through the gap between seats when the flight attendant wasn't looking. "Maya, do you know what your mother does for work?" Mrs. Chen asked. "She's some kind of business executive. She travels a lot for work and has meetings all the time. She's always really busy." "What company does she work for?" Maya shrugged. "I'm not really sure. She talks about airlines and business stuff, but I don't pay much attention. It's pretty boring." Mrs. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Something was telling her there was more to this story than Maya realized. As the flight continued, Rebecca's mood started to change. The businessman in first class had made her nervous with all his questions, and now she noticed that several passengers were looking at her strangely. The warm smiles and congratulations she'd been receiving earlier had stopped. She tried to push the uncomfortable feeling away by focusing on her duties, but she couldn't shake the sensation that something was wrong. When she walked through the main cabin to check on passengers, she noticed Mrs. Chen sitting with Maya and felt a spike of irritation. "Is everything all right back here?" Rebecca asked, stopping next to them. "Everything's fine," Mrs. Chen replied calmly. "Just getting to know this lovely young lady." Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ma'am, I hope you're not encouraging her to cause any problems. She's already had enough excitement for one day." "The only problem I see," Mrs. Chen said quietly, "is that a legitimate passenger was treated poorly for no good reason." Rebecca's smile became forced. "Ma'am, I handled the situation appropriately. Sometimes passengers don't understand airline procedures." "I've been flying for 40 years, Mrs. Chen replied. "I understand procedures quite well." The two women stared at each other for a moment, and Rebecca realized she wasn't going to win this conversation. She forced her smile wider and walked away, but Maya could see her hands were shaking slightly. "She looks upset," Maya whispered. "Good," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "She should be upset. What she did to you was wrong, and I have a feeling she's going to find out just how wrong very soon." As the plane began its descent toward Los Angeles, Maya felt a mix of emotions. She was excited to see her aunt, but she was also dreading having to explain to her grandmother what had happened. She had no idea that her simple text message had already set much bigger events in motion. Maya's phone buzzed as the plane touched down in Los Angeles. She had 3 missed calls from her mother and several text messages. Her heart sank as she read them. "Maya, call me as soon as you land. Your grandmother told me what happened on the flight. Honey, are you okay? I'm very concerned about this situation. Please call me immediately. I need to hear exactly what happened." Maya felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Her mother sounded really upset, and Maya knew she was probably in trouble somehow. Maybe she should have stood up for herself more. Or maybe she should have insisted the flight attendants check their computer system. As passengers began gathering their belongings, Mrs. Chen stopped by Maya's seat one more time. "Dear, before you go, I want you to promise me something," the elderly woman said seriously. "Promise me you'll tell your family exactly what happened today. Every detail. Don't leave anything out and don't blame yourself for any of it." "Yes, ma'am," Maya replied. "But I'm worried they're going to be mad at me." "They should be mad," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "But not at you. At the people who treated you poorly when you did nothing wrong." Maya nodded and gathered her backpack. As she walked off the plane, she noticed Rebecca was nowhere to be seen. The flight attendant had disappeared into the crew area before passengers started leaving. 20 minutes later, Maya was sitting in the airport's food court, talking to her mother on the phone. She had already told the whole story twice. Once to her Aunt Lisa, who picked her up, and now again to her mother. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," her mother said, and Maya could hear something dangerous in her voice that she'd never heard before. "The flight attendant took your boarding pass, examined it closely, then decided you couldn't possibly have a legitimate first-class ticket because of how you looked." "Yes, ma'am. She said first class was for paying customers, and that I must have found the ticket or something. And she moved you to a middle seat in economy without actually checking the computer system to verify your reservation. She said the system was down, but the businessman in first class later said that didn't make sense." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When her mother spoke again, her voice was very calm and very controlled. "Maya, I want you to send me everything. Photos of your boarding pass, the flight attendant's name, the flight number, everything you can remember. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Chen already helped me take pictures of everything." "Who is Mrs. Chen?" A nice lady from first class who saw what happened. She said it wasn't normal and that I should tell you everything. I want to talk to Mrs. Chen if possible. Can you put her on the phone? Maya looked around and spotted Mrs. Chen sitting at a nearby table with her own family. She walked over and explained that her mother wanted to speak with her. Mrs. Chen took the phone with a serious expression. Hello, this is Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen, this is Maya's mother, Dr. Amelia Johnson. I understand you witnessed what happened to my daughter today. I did, and I have to tell you, in 40 years of flying, I've never seen a flight attendant treat a passenger the way yours was treated. It was completely inappropriate. Can you tell me exactly what you observed? Mrs. Chen described the boarding incident in detail, including Rebecca's comments about first class being for paying customers, and her later bragging to other passengers about catching someone with a fake ticket. She kept telling people in first class about how she spotted a troublemaker right away, Mrs. Chen explained. She seemed very proud of herself for discriminating against your daughter. Dr. Johnson was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Chen, I cannot thank you enough for looking out for Maya and for documenting what happened. Would you be willing to provide a written statement about what you witnessed? Absolutely. What that flight attendant did was wrong, and she should face consequences for it. After Mrs. Chen hung up, Dr. Johnson sat in her office staring at her phone. Most people didn't know it, but Dr. Amelia Johnson was the owner and CEO of Skyline Airlines, the very airline that had just discriminated against her daughter. She had built her fortune in technology, creating software that revolutionized airline booking systems. 2 years ago, when Skyline Airlines was struggling financially, she had purchased the company with plans to modernize it and improve its customer service. She'd been working tirelessly to change the company culture and eliminate exactly the kind of discrimination that had just happened to Maya. Dr. Johnson pressed her intercom button. Patricia, I need you to get me everything on Flight 447 that landed in Los Angeles an hour ago. Crew records, passenger manifests, any incident reports, and I want to speak with the head of operations immediately. Right away, Dr. Johnson. Is everything all right? No, Patricia. Everything is not all right. Within 30 minutes, Dr. Johnson had a complete picture of what had happened. The record showed that Maya's ticket was completely legitimate, purchased by her grandmother 3 weeks ago and confirmed in the system. There was no computer outage reported, and most damning of all, Rebecca had filed an incident report claiming she had prevented a fraudulent boarding attempt by a minor passenger. Dr. Johnson's assistant knocked on her door. Dr. Johnson, I have Tom Mitchell from Operations on line 2. Tom, I need you to pull Rebecca Martinez's employment file immediately. Flight attendant on Flight 447 today. Sure thing. Any particular reason? She discriminated against a passenger today and then filed a false report about it. I want her complete employment history on my desk in 1 hour. Absolutely. I'll pull everything we have. Dr. Johnson hung up and called Maya back. Hi, sweetheart, how are you feeling? I'm okay, Mom. Aunt Lisa took me for ice cream, but I'm still really confused about what happened. Maya, what happened to you today was completely unacceptable. You did nothing wrong and you were treated badly because of prejudice and discrimination. But why would she do that to me? Dr. Johnson felt her heart break a little. Some people make assumptions about others based on how they look or how old they are. It's wrong, and it's illegal, and it's not going to be tolerated. Are you going to complain to the airline? Dr. Johnson almost smiled despite her anger. You could say that. Maya, there's something I need to tell you about my work. An hour later, Maya was sitting in her aunt's living room with her mouth hanging open. You own the airline? She whispered. I do. I bought Skyline Airlines 2 years ago, and I've been working to change exactly the kind of behavior you experienced today. So the flight attendant who was mean to me, she works for you? She did work for me. After tomorrow, she won't. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Mom, are you only doing something because I'm your daughter? Dr. Johnson smiled sadly. Honey, I would be taking action even if this happened to a complete stranger. That's why I bought this airline, to make sure all passengers are treated with respect and dignity. But I have to admit, the fact that it happened to my own daughter makes me more determined than ever to fix these problems. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to make sure Rebecca Martinez and her supervisor face appropriate consequences for their actions. Then I'm going to review our entire training program to make sure this never happens again. Meanwhile, Rebecca was at home, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. She was actually in a good mood telling her roommate about her successful day at work. "I caught this teenager trying to sneak into first class with a fake ticket," she said proudly. "It was so obvious she didn't belong there. I handled it perfectly." "How did you know the ticket was fake?" her roommate asked. "Oh, please, you could tell just by looking at her. Wrong clothes, wrong attitude, wrong everything. First-class passengers have class, you know." Rebecca posted about her day on social media, writing, "Another day protecting the integrity of first-class service. Some people think they can just walk into premium seating, but experience teaches you to spot the real passengers from the wannabes. Flight attendant life, first-class service." She had no idea that her post would soon be screenshot and shared thousands of times as evidence of her discriminatory behavior. At Skyline Airlines headquarters, Dr. Johnson was working late into the night, reviewing every complaint ever filed against Rebecca Martinez. What she found made her blood boil. There were 6 formal complaints in 18 months, all from passengers of color who felt they had been treated differently by Rebecca. 3 complaints about being questioned excessively about their tickets. 2 complaints about being searched more thoroughly than other passengers. 1 complaint about being moved to a different seat without explanation. All of the complaints had been dismissed by Rebecca's supervisor, David, with notes like, "Passenger seemed overly sensitive," and "crew member was following standard procedures." Dr. Johnson realized that Maya's experience wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of discrimination that had been ignored and covered up by supervisors who either didn't care or were complicit. She picked up her phone and called her head of human resources. "Janet, I need you to come in early tomorrow morning. We have a serious situation that requires immediate action." "How serious are we talking?" "The kind of serious that could destroy our company if we don't handle it properly." "And Janet?" "Call legal too. We're going to need them." Rebecca woke up the next morning feeling great about herself. She hummed while making coffee and checked her social media to see if anyone had liked her post about protecting first class. Instead, she found dozens of angry comments and messages from people calling her discriminatory and worse. "What the heck?" she muttered, scrolling through the responses. Someone had shared her post with the caption, "Flight attendant brags about profiling passengers." The story was spreading fast, with people sharing their own experiences of discrimination on flights. Her phone rang. It was her supervisor, David. "Rebecca, you need to get to the airport immediately. There's been a complaint filed against you and management wants to see you right away." "A complaint? About what?" "Something about that passenger situation yesterday." "Just get here as fast as you can." Rebecca's stomach dropped. How could anyone complain? She had handled everything perfectly. The girl with the fake ticket couldn't possibly have gotten her in trouble, could she? 20 minutes later, Rebecca was sitting in a conference room she'd never seen before, facing 3 people she didn't recognize. One was a woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Janet from Human Resources. Another was a serious-looking man named Robert from Legal. The third person made Rebecca's blood run cold. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Dr. Amelia Johnson, CEO of Skyline Airlines." Rebecca felt like she might faint. The CEO. Why was the CEO here for a simple passenger complaint? "Ms. Martinez," Dr. Johnson continued in a calm, professional voice. "I understand you had an interaction with a passenger named Maya Johnson yesterday on Flight 447. "Yes, ma'am," Rebecca stammered. "There was a young passenger who had some kind of ticket mix-up. I handled it according to company policy. Can you describe exactly what happened?" Rebecca took a deep breath and told her version of the story, emphasizing how she had protected first class from someone who obviously didn't belong there. As she spoke, she noticed the 3 people exchanging glances that made her increasingly nervous. "Ms. Martinez," the legal representative interrupted, "you stated in your incident report that you prevented a fraudulent boarding attempt. What evidence did you have that the passenger's ticket was fraudulent?" "Well, it was obvious just by looking at her." "What specifically was obvious?" Dr. Johnson asked sharply. Rebecca realized she was walking into dangerous territory. She was very young and she was dressed casually, and first-class tickets are very expensive. "So you determined a ticket was fraudulent based on the passenger's age and clothing?" "No, that's not. I used my professional judgment." Janet from HR opened a folder. "Ms. Martinez, I have the booking record for passenger Maya Johnson right here. The ticket was purchased 3 weeks ago with a valid credit card and was completely legitimate. Why didn't you verify this in our computer system?" The system was down for maintenance, Rebecca said quickly. Robert from legal pulled out his phone. I just spoke with our IT department. There was no system maintenance yesterday. Our reservation system was fully operational all day. Rebecca felt sweat starting to form on her forehead. Well, maybe I was mistaken about that, but the passenger seemed suspicious. Ms. Martinez, Dr. Johnson interrupted. Maya Johnson is my daughter. The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. She opened and closed her mouth several times, unable to form any words. Your daughter? She finally whispered. My 15-year-old daughter traveling alone for the first time, with a completely legitimate first-class ticket that her grandmother saved for months to buy as a special surprise. Rebecca felt like the room was spinning. Dr. Johnson, I had no idea. If you had known what, Ms. Martinez? That you should treat passengers with respect regardless of who their parents are. That you should verify tickets instead of making assumptions based on appearance. No, ma'am, that's not what I meant. Dr. Johnson leaned forward. Ms. Martinez, I want you to understand something very clearly. I'm not here because you mistreated my daughter specifically. I'm here because you discriminated against a passenger, filed a false report, and violated every principle this company stands for. Janet opened another folder. Ms. Martinez, we've reviewed your employment record. In the past 18 months, there have been 6 formal complaints filed against you for discriminatory behavior. All of them were dismissed by your supervisor without proper investigation. Rebecca's face went white. Those complaints were all misunderstandings. Were they? Robert asked. Because we have security footage from yesterday showing you treating Maya Johnson very differently than you treated the white passengers who boarded before her. We also have recordings of you bragging to first-class passengers about preventing a fraudulent boarding attempt. And, Dr. Johnson added coldly, we have your social media post from last night where you bragged about being able to spot real passengers from wannabes based on their appearance. Rebecca realized her career was over. Dr. Johnson, please, I can explain. There's nothing to explain, Ms. Martinez. Your actions yesterday were discriminatory, illegal, and completely contrary to our company values. Your employment with Skyline Airlines is terminated immediately, but I've worked here for 8 years. I have a good record. You have a record of discrimination that was ignored by supervisors who failed to do their jobs, Dr. Johnson replied. That ends today. After Rebecca left the building in tears, Dr. Johnson turned her attention to the next meeting. David, Rebecca's supervisor, was brought in, looking nervous but trying to appear confident. David, Dr. Johnson began, I understand you've been Rebecca Martinez's supervisor for the past 2 years. Yes, ma'am. She's always been a reliable employee. Reliable? Is that what you call someone who has 6 discrimination complaints filed against her? David shifted uncomfortably. Those complaints were investigated and found to be without merit. Really? Can you show me the investigation files? David's confidence cracked. Well, I looked into them. You dismissed them without any real investigation, Dr. Johnson stated. You protected an employee who was discriminating against passengers because it was easier than addressing the problem. Dr. Johnson, Rebecca never meant any harm. She was just trying to maintain standards. What standards, David? The standard of judging passengers by their skin color and clothing. The standard of assuming young people can't afford first-class tickets. David realized he was in serious trouble. Ma'am, I may have made some errors in judgment. You enabled discrimination and harassment of our customers. Your employment is also terminated, effective immediately. Word of the termination spread quickly through the airline industry. By afternoon, the story had hit social media and news outlets. Mrs. Chen, the passenger who had witnessed Maya's treatment, had shared her account online, and it was being picked up by major news organizations. Maya was at her aunt's house, watching the story unfold on the news with amazement. I can't believe this is all because of what happened to me, she said. Her Aunt Lisa put an arm around her. It's not just because of what happened to you, sweetheart. Your mom told me there were lots of other passengers who were treated badly too. What happened to you was just the thing that finally brought it all to light. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How are you doing with all this attention, honey? It's weird, but I think it's good that people are talking about it. Maya texted back. I'm proud of how you're handling this. And Maya, Mrs. Chen asked me to tell you that she's proud of you too. Maya smiled. Mrs. Chen had become an unexpected hero in all of this. and her testimony was helping to ensure that Rebecca and David faced real consequences for their actions. Meanwhile, Rebecca was at home, watching her life fall apart on social media. Her discriminatory post had been shared thousands of times, and people were calling for airlines industry-wide to review their training and hiring practices. She tried calling friends in the industry, but word had already spread. No airline wanted to hire someone with her reputation. Her 8-year career was over, and she was facing the possibility of legal action from the passengers she had discriminated against. "This is all that girl's fault," she muttered to her roommate. "If she hadn't made such a big deal about it, Rebecca," her roommate said quietly, "maybe it's time to admit that you were wrong. What you did to that kid was horrible." But Rebecca wasn't ready to accept responsibility. In her mind, she was still the victim of an unfair system that had turned against her for doing her job. She had no idea that her attitude was exactly the problem Dr. Johnson was working to eliminate from her airline. As the day ended, Dr. Johnson was working late again, but this time she was planning positive changes instead of dealing with damage control. She was drafting new training programs, hiring policies and oversight procedures that would prevent another Maya from being discriminated against. The hardest part wasn't dealing with Rebecca and David. The hardest part was knowing that her own daughter had experienced the kind of discrimination she had been fighting against, and that it had happened right under her nose in her own company. 1 week later, Dr. Johnson called an emergency meeting with every department head at Skyline Airlines. The conference room was packed with managers, supervisors, and senior staff members, all wondering what this urgent gathering was about. "I want to tell you all a story," Dr. Johnson began, standing at the front of the room. "Last week, a 15-year-old girl with a legitimate first-class ticket was humiliated and discriminated against by our staff. That girl was my daughter." The room fell completely silent. Dr. Johnson continued, "But I'm not here as Maya's mother. I'm here as the CEO of a company that has allowed discrimination to flourish under our watch." She clicked a button, and the projection screen showed statistics that made everyone uncomfortable. "In the past 2 years, we've received 47 complaints about discriminatory treatment from passengers. 47. And how many resulted in meaningful action? 0. A department head raised his hand tentatively. "Dr. Johnson, we do take these complaints seriously." "Do we?" Dr. Johnson interrupted. "Because Rebecca Martinez had 6 complaints filed against her in 18 months, and her supervisor dismissed every single one without investigation. That doesn't sound like taking things seriously to me." She clicked to the next slide, showing photos of Rebecca's social media posts and quotes from other passengers who had been discriminated against. "This is what happens when we ignore problems instead of addressing them. They don't go away. They get worse and they damage our reputation, our values, and most importantly, they hurt real people." Dr. Johnson looked around the room at the uncomfortable faces. "Effective immediately, we're implementing new policies and procedures. Every discrimination complaint will be investigated by an independent team. Every staff member will undergo comprehensive bias training, and anyone who discriminates against passengers or covers up discrimination will be terminated." She paused for effect. "Some of you might think this is an overreaction to one incident. Let me be clear. This is not about one incident. This is about creating an airline where every passenger is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their age, race, appearance, or economic status." Over the next month, changes swept through Skyline Airlines like a storm. Every employee attended mandatory training sessions led by diversity experts. New hiring practices were implemented to attract more diverse staff. Customer service protocols were completely rewritten. Maya returned home from her California trip to find herself at the center of a national conversation about discrimination in the airline industry. News crews wanted to interview her, and she was invited to speak at conferences about passenger rights. At first, she was overwhelmed by the attention, but with her mother's guidance, she began to see it as an opportunity to help other people who might face similar discrimination. "I was scared to speak up at first," Maya told a reporter during her first television interview. "But Mrs. Chen helped me understand that staying quiet doesn't protect you from discrimination. It just protects the people who discriminate." The interview went viral, and Maya became an unexpected spokesperson for passenger rights. She started receiving messages from other young people who had been discriminated against in various situations. Mrs. Chen became a close family friend. She and Maya stayed in touch, and the elderly woman often shared stories of her own experiences with discrimination during the civil rights era. "You remind me of myself when I was young," Mrs. Chen told Maya during one of their phone conversations. "Scared but determined to do what's right." "Were you really scared back then?" Maya asked. "Terrified," Mrs. Chen admitted. "But fear doesn't mean you can't be brave. Bravery means doing the right thing even when you're afraid." Meanwhile, Rebecca was struggling to find work in the airline industry. Word of her discriminatory behavior had spread, and no company wanted to hire someone with her reputation. She finally found a job at a small customer service call center, making much less money than she had as a flight attendant. For months, she remained bitter and angry, blaming Maya and Dr. Johnson for ruining her life. But slowly, as she watched the news coverage and read the stories of other passengers who had been discriminated against, she began to understand the real impact of her actions. It wasn't until she attended a mandatory diversity training session at her new job that she finally had a breakthrough. The trainer, a woman named Patricia, asked participants to share a time when they had been judged unfairly. Rebecca found herself talking about being passed over for promotions because she didn't have a college degree, and how frustrating it was when people made assumptions about her intelligence based on her background. "How did that make you feel?" Patricia asked. "Angry, hurt, like I wasn't being seen for who I really was," Rebecca replied. "Now imagine feeling that way because of your skin color, or your age, or the way you dress. Imagine experiencing that kind of judgment every time you tried to board a plane or enter a restaurant or apply for a job." For the first time, Rebecca really understood what she had done to Maya and countless other passengers. The realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. After the training session, Rebecca went home and wrote a long letter. "Dear Maya," it began, "you don't know me, but I'm the flight attendant who treated you badly on Flight 447. I've been angry and bitter for months, but I finally understand that I was wrong. Not just a little wrong, but completely, terribly wrong." She wrote about her childhood in a small town where she had learned to make assumptions about people based on their appearance. She wrote about her fear of losing her job and how that fear had made her defensive and closed-minded. Most importantly, she wrote about how sorry she was for the pain she had caused. Maya received the letter 2 weeks later. She read it 3 times before showing it to her mother. "What do you think I should do?" Maya asked. Dr. Johnson read the letter carefully. "That's entirely up to you, sweetheart. You don't owe her forgiveness, but if you want to respond, that's your choice." Maya thought about it for several days. Finally, she wrote back, "Dear Rebecca, thank you for your letter. I was hurt by what happened, but I'm glad you're learning from it. I hope you'll use this experience to treat other people better in the future. Maya." It was a short response, but it meant everything to Rebecca. She framed the letter and kept it on her desk as a daily reminder of the importance of treating everyone with respect. 6 months after the incident, Dr. Johnson announced the creation of the Maya Johnson Foundation for Passenger Rights, a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting discrimination in travel and transportation. Maya was named as the foundation's first youth ambassador. The foundation's first initiative was a scholarship program that provided travel opportunities for underprivileged young people. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that the scholarship was funded partly by the settlement money from the lawsuit against the airline. "We wanted to turn something negative into something positive," Dr. Johnson explained at the foundation's launch event. "Maya's experience was traumatic, but we're using it to create opportunities for other young people." Maya spoke at the event, sharing her story and encouraging other young people to speak up when they witnessed discrimination. "I learned that staying quiet doesn't protect you," she said, "but speaking up can protect others. Every time we call out discrimination, we make it a little bit harder for it to happen again." The audience gave her a standing ovation, including Mrs. Chen, who had flown in from California specifically for the event. Skyline Airlines became a model for other companies in the industry. Their new training programs were copied by competitors, and their transparent approach to handling discrimination complaints set a new standard for the industry. A year later, Maya was boarding another Skyline Airlines flight, this time to speak at a conference about youth advocacy. As she handed her boarding pass to the flight attendant, she felt a moment of nervousness, remembering her previous experience, but the flight attendant, A young man named Carlos looked at her ticket and smiled warmly. "First class, seat 3A, right this way, Miss Johnson. We're honored to have you flying with us today." As Maya settled into her seat, she looked around the first-class cabin and thought about how different things were now. The flight attendants had been through extensive training. There were clear procedures for handling any complaints. And, most importantly, there was a culture of respect and inclusion that started at the top with her mother and extended to every employee. Maya pulled out her phone and texted her mother. Boarding went perfectly. The flight attendant was really nice and professional. Dr. Johnson texted back immediately. "That's how it should always be. Have a safe flight, sweetheart. I'm proud of you." As the plane took off, Maya looked out the window and reflected on how much her life had changed since that difficult day a year ago. She had found her voice made a difference in the world and helped create positive change for countless other passengers. The scared 15-year-old, who had been humiliated and discriminated against, had become a confident young advocate who wasn't afraid to stand up for what was right. And she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would never again let someone make her feel like she didn't belong somewhere she had every right to be. The plane climbed higher into the sky, carrying Maya toward her next adventure and her next opportunity to make the world a little bit more fair and just for everyone.